Hey guys, here's the review for your final. I'm going to start off with stuff related to graphing. First up, we've got a square root graph. We talked a lot about doing these as a table and plugging in points for x and y that make the inside equal to 0, 1, and 4. So in this case, that would be -1, 0, and 3. And when we do that, so -1 plus 1 is 0, square root of 0 is 0. -1 comma 0, okay, well A has that, B does not. This is one of the nice things about multiple choice is that you can very quickly cross things out. C does not have that, and D also does not have that. So almost immediately, if you just plug in a single point, you can figure out which graph it is. If I had plugged in 0, we get 0 plus 1 is 1. Square root of 1 is 1. And again, that's the only graph that actually has that point. Oh, this one does too, I guess. But plugging in a couple points will give you the answer without having to do much work. Similarly, for number 2, if I very quickly make a table, even if I don't know what to plug in, I don't know, if I plug in 0, I get an error because that's going to be an imaginary number. If I plug in 1, I get 0. Okay, this one could work for that. This one could work for that. That's a no for C, and that's a no for D. So then I'm down to two choices. If I plug in 2, I get 1 as an answer, and at 2, 1, well, that looks like this guy is my right thing. That's correct. B is the right choice. Moving on to graphing rational functions. We need vertical asymptotes, horizontal asymptotes, x-intercepts, y-intercepts, and to sketch a graph. I don't think you're actually going to be asked to sketch a graph on this, but you will have to deal with the other pieces of this. To find the vertical asymptote, we set the bottom equal to 0. So x minus 2 equals 0. That means that x equals 2. To find the horizontal asymptote, you can either plug in really big numbers or look at the x's and divide what's there. We get 1x over 1x, and that's equal to 1. That means we have a horizontal asymptote at a value of 1. To find any x-intercepts, that means I set the top part equal to 0, because that's what would make the whole thing 0. X plus 3 equals 0. That means that x equals -3. That would be there on my graph. And then for a y-intercept, we're going to set all the x's equal to 0. And when we do that, we get 0 plus 3 over 0 minus 2 equals -3 over 2, which is somewhere around there. The nice shape of this graph would look something like this. Doing another one of these, let's take a look at number 7. The vertical asymptote would be whatever makes the bottom equal to 0. So x minus 2 equals 0. That means that x equals 2. For a horizontal asymptote, if I plug in a really big number for this, we get like -1 over a really big number, which is basically 0. To find any x-intercepts, I'd set the top equal to 0. If I get 0 equals 1, that tells me there are none. And then finally, y-intercepts. Plug in 0 for x, we get -1 over 0 minus 2 is -2. We get a half. My graph is going to look something like this. The big important part of this is getting those points right. we got to graph some exponential stuff, and again, I'm just going to plug in some points into a table and see what's going on here. I notice that my exponents in both of these cases, these are the two that I'm going to do, are just an x. That means my happy numbers will be -1, 0, and 1 in both cases. When I plug -1 in, we get 3 times 2 is going to be 6. We get 3 times 1 is 3, and 3 times 1/2 is 3 over 2, or 1.5. If I take a look at these, the one has -1 comma 6. Looks like it might be D, and that's the only one that has that. 0 comma 3, D has that, and nobody else has that either. I think we're down to just D as our answer. For the second one, 2 times 3 to the x, we've got -1 giving us 3 over 2, 0 giving us 3, and 1 giving us 6. It's kind of the flip of the one we just did. The only one that's flipped is going to be A. That has those 3 points on it. The nice thing about multiple choice is that when you have that, even if you just want to throw these in your calculator and graph, you can get a pretty good idea of which one is the right one. Graphing logs you will not have to do.